Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's live video here on Shreem Brzee Official. My name is Gina. Spiritual name is Lakshmi. Nice to see you again. So we've been coming back every Friday to have these interchanges of communication. And today is an important one, I feel, because first of all, it's not talked about all that often. And second of all, it impacts so many of us. And the topic today is losing people in your life because of your spiritual path. Let that sink in. You are on a path that you have found, that you've been drawn to because you want to feel more enriched. You want to evolve. You want to tap into a deeper spirit within you and pretty much through some sort of means, whether that be a spiritual path or religion, and sometimes the side effect is that you may lose people. Now, of course, that's not your intention unless your intention is to shake things up in your life, and sometimes that happens. However, sometimes even the people we really love or really want in our lives, really want to keep close to us, are the ones that sometimes fall away. So let's take a look at why that might happen. First of all, what are relationships based on? Type it in chat, think about it. What are your relationships based on? A lot of times relationships are based on trust, a knowingness, something that can be counted on, right? And now let's say someone in your life is changing, either radically or over time. That could erode some of the trust. It could start breaking down the foundation of what that relationship was at the time that you made that connection, that you built that relationship, that you made some sort of agreement, right? And once that happens, that foundation starts getting rocked, the trust maybe is not quite there so much. And I don't mean trust as anyone, no betrayal, just the trust in that I want this person to be the same as they were when I met them, and now they're no longer that way. That internal trust, that subconscious trust can be something that gets eroded over time. And you, as the spiritual practitioner, may find that people in your life are feeling that way. They may feel betrayed because maybe when they fell in love with you, if it's a romantic or intimate relationship, they wanted you to stay that way. And now, days, months, years down the road, after you've been engaged in a spiritual path, you may not be that person anymore. You may feel like you're a better person. You may feel like you have evolved. You are contributing to your life's journey, but they don't see it that way. So we have to make some tough decisions, and we have opportunity to choose the people we want in our life because of how they will support our journey. So what this comes down to is priority. What is your priority in terms of the relationships you want? For example, I started my spiritual path when I was 19 years old. I was pretty young. I started studying with a teacher. And did I change? Yeah, absolutely. I was in college, right? Like, so it was a very formative year. So my friends, let's say in high school, knew me a certain way. And when I started shifting, some of them weren't sure what to do with that, right? Like, oh, they weren't necessarily into meditation and weren't sure what to do with this. And they were into what they were into. They wanted to continue their path the way it had been and the way we had known each other. And so as I continued down my path further and got more entrenched in meditation and spirituality and learning the dynamics of our spirit, then some of those people just fell away from my life because they didn't understand, and they weren't participating in what I was. And so for me, it actually made sense to have people in my life who were supportive and or contributing to my journey, because that's what was most important to me at the time. Did I cast away anyone and dislike them? Absolutely not. It's just relationships that fell away, and letting them fall away contributes to your end goal, which is whatever your end goal is. If your end goal is enlightenment or happiness or peace of mind, this path that you're on is always contributing to those end goals. If there are people in your life stopping you, preventing you from your path, from wanting to further develop, That is where it becomes dangerous. This is where you have to make a choice. There's the kind of outliers of the people in your life who you can kind of take or leave, right? Like people, your acquaintances, people who don't have a huge impact, people who aren't maybe judging you all that much. Okay, these are the outliers. But then once you get into your circle of people, your circle of influence, this is where you have to get really choosy. I think you don't have to. You can keep people in your life who maybe oppose or are negative or don't support your practice or your spirituality or your growth, but then you have to accept also the consequences of that. So here you have your circle of people. Okay. Now, personally, I choose that circle of people are people who I'm really open with. Like they know my spiritual the path. I don't hide it. I'm happy to explain it to anyone who doesn't understand. But if there's someone who deeply opposes that, they don't belong in my circle because that's not supporting me and my priorities. My priority is that this practice means a lot to me, that my spiritual growth means everything to me, that if there isn't someone in this circle who can support and contribute to that, then that's okay. They could become an outlier, right? They could become an acquaintance, but they can't stay in my circle because it doesn't support my priority. Now, I get everyone has different priorities. Perhaps your priority is your family unit and that you want to keep that intact regardless of what those people inside of it, maybe it's a sibling or a spouse or a parent, regardless of what they think, you still have to or want to, I should say, you're always making a choice. You want to keep that intact. Sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes the priority is the peace of mind, the spiritual development. And so a family unit may not stay intact because the priority of that person. What I'm asking you to do today is to look at your priorities and see how your actions are aligned to those priorities in order to get what it is you want from your spiritual practice and from your life. And you better believe the people around you are making a huge impact and influence in that. And that's why this conversation is so important. So first of all, take a look at your unit, your inner circle, the circle of people you surround yourself the most, whether they're coworkers, good friends, family, etc. Take a look at that. Is there anyone in there who is not supporting your goal of spiritual development? If so, now you get to choose. Is the priority the relationship with that person, or is the priority your relationship with your spiritual practice and your development? And then you get to choose which one takes precedence and which one is going to live on, I should say, in your life in a more prominent way. Now, some people will remove themselves from your life. That's a little easier on you. Sometimes it's a little harder. Some people will say, well, I don't agree with what you're doing, and so I would like to remove myself from this situation. Honor their choice. They're making a choice. And guess what? It's benefiting you in the long run because that person is already admitting that they don't want to participate. And not even that they don't want to participate in your journey, but they don't want anything to do with it, right? They're not going to be around for what happens to you. And I had one of those people in my life too. An acquaintance I know for a while kind of resurfaced a couple years ago. And then he found out, he's like, wow, this is all so weird. I can't believe who you are. I thought you were this nice person. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize I wasn't a nice person any longer. He just didn't appreciate or understand my spiritual views. And I'm not vocal about it. So he quickly found out and then left. And I just told him, I wish you well. And good luck on your journey. So we're grateful. We're grateful for people who leave us. And we are grateful for our choices that we make in relationship to people. And we also have to be careful. So another example is early on, my immediate family, mother, brother, sister, weren't quite sure about my spiritual practices. I helped as best I could to explain to them, and they had their own opinions about it, but they didn't forcefully impose anything upon me. And so we just lived this life where it's like I was doing my thing, they were doing their thing. We came together as family. We maybe didn't talk about it so much. And that was early on. As time went on and they were like, oh, this isn't going away. Then we both, I opened the door too. And I said, is there anything you'd like to ask me? Is there anything that you have concerns about? And they did. and we had a conversation. And then one thing my mom said, and she's like, I get concerned. I feel like, you study with these gurus. I'm not sure what that's all about. But I tell people who ask about you, like my other family members or friends or whatever, I tell them she's happy, she has a good job, and she seems to be doing really well. So for her, the outer of how my life was being represented said something. It said something that something's not totally wrong. Like I am not alienating my friends and family. I am not being a recluse somewhere. I am, I have a upholding type of standard of life. I'm a very happy person, that type of thing. So she saw that how my life was represented seemed okay to her. It was acceptable to her. And that sent her a message of, oh, then she must be okay. Even though I don't understand all this stuff, she must be okay. Fast forward 10 years, my mom is in our courses. She appreciates Dr. Pillai's meditations. She chants Shreem, Brzee. So, sometimes you just give people time. I've been studying with Dr. Pillai for 20 years. I have been studying spirituality and meditation for, oh gosh, what is it? 28 years, something like that. So it's been a long time coming for my family to really I don't know if they fully understand, but at least accept me for who I am. And that's what I did. I gave that space early on. I wasn't quick to cut them off because they didn't understand it or accept it. I let that space be because it wasn't imposing upon my life. Now, had they imposed upon it, maybe I would have made different decisions early on. Thankfully, I didn't have to. If you have people imposing upon your spiritual practice, that's where you need to make decisions. And depending on how close they are to you is how difficult or easy that may be. Like I said, the outliers, pretty easy to let go of. This person is opposed to me. I don't need them in my life. Not for 1 second. If a closer family member is opposed to me, maybe I can talk to them. Maybe we can come to some agreement. Maybe we can come to some understanding. Maybe we can come to an understanding that we're just going to disagree and agree to disagree. I have people in my life that way too, that I don't want to let go of, but we agree to disagree on our lifestyles. I don't agree with the way they have their life, and they don't agree with the way I have my life, but we're still family, and I decided not to relinquish that. Okay, so choice again. But if ever that agree to disagree steps into something that's harmful, such as fighting or deep opposition or anything like that, then that would be something I would take a step towards in further separation. So I gave a few scenarios of how this all could go. Bottom line is relationships are integral to how we live in life. And if you have people in your life who are opposing your spiritual practice, then that is something to take seriously and to see how that works for you. If you have people who aren't opposing, but just aren't in agreement with, and depending on how close they are, see if you can come to some harmony on it. If there's people who are just indifferent, deal with that however you want to deal with that. Now, I get questions a lot where people are in our programs or chanting Shreem Brzee or taking on new spiritual practice, and their spouse doesn't quite get it. What do they do? What I usually tell them is give them time and space. Give them time and space. Now, unless this spouse is angry or violently opposing what it is you do, you can just let it be open, like I did with my family. Just let it be and let them see over time it's not bad for you. Sometimes our loved ones are concerned for us, one, because they don't understand what we're doing. They don't, if they're a Christian background or a different Muslim background or something where it seems a little weird. That's okay. That's just their concern for you. Okay. And sometimes they just have so it can be either concern or that they just really don't like it. And then they're mapping their likes and dislikes onto you. Now, if it's a concern, it's a little easier to deal with because now we just have a person who's generally feeling like I don't understand. Maybe this is not good for you. In which case, you give them the opportunity to see that it is good for you. If in fact it is good for you, and hopefully it is. But you give them the time, kind of let them go through their process. Because remember, it's their process just as much as it is your process. they have a loved one who's now changing. What do they do about it? They have to figure out how to deal. And maybe you can have a conversation about that and say, well, I'm not going anywhere. I still love you. I'm still committed to our relationship, but I have this thing that really works for me. And when it really works for me and I can feel peaceful and I can feel better and I can go meditate for a few minutes, I get to come back to you and be more available to you. So hopefully that person, that significant other, realizes that they too can benefit from you fulfilling and nurturing your own self. Okay? So you have that aspect. And then of the concern, so that hopefully that comforts their concern over you. And over time, that will be proven as long as the techniques are working for you and as long as this is a valuable journey for you. The other one is the not understanding. If they don't understand and they, like, for example, a Christian isn't quite sure why you're chanting a mantra, isn't that sacrilegious? Doesn't this go against what you had already committed to? Let's say you're a Christian and now your Christian friends are like, what, don't you love Jesus anymore? Like, what's going on? Now, let's just make it really clear. You can chant Shreem, Brzee and maintain any other religion that you want. There's Shreem, Brzee, Dr. Pillai Center is not making any claims that you should separate yourself from your religion, your faith in any way. Shreem, Brzee is a mantra that can be done and you can maintain anything that you're already doing. Okay? So let's just put that out there. And so when someone is not understanding, you could again let them let them have that misunderstanding or lack of understanding. You can help them understand. You can relate to and speak to their concerns. So, for example, if their concern is that they don't understand why this is, you can just explain to them. It's a sound vibration. Everything is, look up the string theory. Sound vibration is through everything that we have on earth, right? It's a creative force. Now, by chanting or saying this prayer or this sound, it's a way that I feel better. It's a way that I feel better. And if you explain it to them in terms that they can hear, then you're able to get a little further on that path. Okay? So that's what I wanted to say about relationships, how to, the variety of ways that this could come up in your relationships. And then the second part that I wanted to talk about was how to deal with the loss of that. Now, we may have painful separations because maybe it didn't work out. Like the first part of this whole segment was like how to make it work out. And maybe if it doesn't work out, we have to then work through or assess that person not in our life. Like I said earlier, them leaving on their own, or for us to decide to cut someone out. Now for that, it's not easy. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. You love someone, you want someone in your life, they're leaving because they don't understand or don't appreciate or don't want you to do what you're doing. You make the choice to continue to do what you're doing because you know it's the best thing for you. And then that relationship is severed. Now dealing with that is, what can you do? First of all, never put forward your judgment on them, right? Because that's exactly what they did. They're putting a judgment on you and they're leaving. You don't want to do the same thing. You want to give them the space that they need. Everyone is doing the best that they possibly can in life. And if we give them the space that they need to do what's best or what they think is best for them, we want them to do that. We want to support them in that, okay? So they're doing what's best for them. They can't be in this relationship. Honor that. Honor that. Okay, next is wishing them well. We want to send them off with love and support. And again, it comes back to reinforcing how your path can be more deeply understood by others because you're honoring your greatness, you're honoring your divinity, you're honoring other people's divinity by allowing them and allowing them to be who they want to be and wishing them well on that journey, praying for them. I'm not saying praying for them to come back for you, just praying for their peace and happiness and well-being, okay? We're not trying to influence anyone. We're just creating peace and harmony through everything that we do. And that's really important to remember. Okay, so that is what I wanted to say today. I'll take a few questions in chat now. If there's anything that folks have for comments or questions, go ahead and type it in now. Thankfully, I haven't had any like hard, and while I'm waiting for questions, thankfully I haven't had any really harsh disconnects for the people in my life, but super important to know what you want. And that's why we were talking about how to deal with the loss of people in your life due to spiritual practices, because they just might not understand, and because this is your priority and your choice of what it is you want to do. All right, so it doesn't look like there's any questions. Give it another minute. Any other questions? Comments? Has this happened to you? Please comment please comment if this is something that's happened to you. We want to know what experiences that you've had, and also so we can talk to and provide any other support and teachings around that. So would love to hear from you how this topic lands, how it has affected you, and really what you're doing about it. All right, I guess there's no questions. Well, please post your comments. We'd love to hear how this topic is for you and what you're doing with your folks, with your relationships. Relationships are so important. And also, if you have other ideas for videos, then please post them, because would love to be able to do some videos based on the topics that you want to hear about. There's someone who posted, someone blocked me from Facebook yesterday. Yes, it'll happen, right? And it just like comes back to like being on the right side, being the kind one, being the forgiving one, being the nurturing one. Okay. And if someone wants to block you, then we thank them. Always thank God for what we've been given. And if we've been given a departure from someone, we thank God. Someone says, my mother is totally opposed to my practices. Now, this depends on how close you are to your mother. You live separately, you live, together. And I have some people who who live in the same house as their parents. Their parents will not accept it in their house. You have to honor that you're living in your parents' house, and you have to either do it secretly or not do your practices at all. Now, this could be motivation to not live in your parents' home if that's, again, depending upon your priority and what you want to hold in your life and have in your life, right? Because if you want to have your autonomy, you'll have to have your own place. Some people put you down. Yep, that'll happen. And that is where you come to either fighting the battle or not fighting the battle. If someone's putting you down for your spiritual practice, you might want to just not have to defend it. Or if it's something you've been able to speak to in a copacetic way, in a harmonious way, then open the conversation. If someone is just going to hold on vehemently to their views and not listen to you, you probably don't want to waste more of your time in that. I'm just reading the notes here. How do you cope with people that live with you and they are negative and consistently mocking you while you're chanting or meditating? Can you not live with those people? If you live with people who mock you, remember we talked about like the degrees of which, like some of these it's indifferent, some people don't agree. And if they're actively trying to be harmful, which is what I interpret as mocking, then that's not, to me, it's not acceptable. That would be a deal breaker. I would do what I can to remove myself from the situation. Now, I get it. You're living with people. Maybe it's not as easy to move out. Maybe you make that as your goal. And then also maybe you don't chant out loud to give them fuel to kind of ridicule you. So, and then you close yourself. You can close yourself in your room. Hopefully you have a separate place and do your meditation. Then you should be okay. But if you can make it a long-term goal to not be in a situation where you're being mocked or ridiculed for your spiritual practices, this is the ideal, right? You want to get yourself out. And in the meantime, reduce their abilities by not giving them more fuel. Okay. And yeah, I get it. You're concealing yourself, but you're doing so for your own good and the good for them. It's really not good karma for them to be mocking you. So the more withdrawn you come and less outward you are about the practice in the environment that's not supportive, the better for you. Someone said I wouldn't mention the word guru in front of my mother. Same. Dr. Ply is my teacher, right? I've called him guru in front of my mom because now she's come a really long way. But guru can have charged responses. People see gurus as taking advantage or cultish, or a variety of negative things have been attached to the word guru. You be careful with how you speak. You might modify that, right? So you have a teacher, you meditate. Not everyone needs to know everything about your practice because they may not understand it. In fact, most people probably don't understand it. That's why having a community like you have in these Facebook groups or on YouTube with Pillai Center, with Shreem, Brzee, that's a safe place because we're all accepting of these practices. People who are not accepting of those practices, you have to be careful, or I suggest you be careful about what you speak to them and what you talk about, what you do, because that leaves open even more opportunity for them to disagree, mock, or put you down for that. So several people are having a situation of being inside of a physical location that is not supportive. So that's a pretty significant situation to be in. And like I said, I know people who go into the bathroom to do their meditation and just spend, you could just say they're taking a bath and spend 15 minutes in there. You can meditate in the bath, right? Like you can have your practice without it being super obvious to the place in which you live, if the place in which you live has people in it who are not supportive. You want to protect yourself. I personally think it's more important to protect your heart, your spirit, your mind, your body, than it is to outwardly be telling everyone your business. It's okay to conceal what you do in order to preserve your peace of mind, okay, and your happiness. And then that's where you go into communities to be able to have that safe space to share and say whatever you want. And that's why Pillai Center has so many communities on Facebook and in groups that we create for our programs, our online programs, places like this where you can be yourself and express yourself. So someone said, Cece said, my partner is engineering grad and he has heard my Shreem Brzee perspective. He chants it occasionally, but he hears me doing it, but his scientific mind won't allow him to fully embrace. That's okay. He's not opposing it, not fully embracing it. He chants it sometimes. Let it be. Don't push it. Maybe he looks up string theory and quantum physics and sees that there's something to a vibration, and maybe somewhere along the line he comes around. Okay, Gabriella is saying, how do you deal with the disappointment of not having the support or the acceptance of your spouse when there is so much benefit from the practice? Now, there's a difference of support and acceptance and opposition, which is what we talked about. So if you don't have your support and acceptance from your spouse, and it sounds like your concern is, I see what you're saying. Okay, so you don't have the support and acceptance of your spouse, yet there's so much to benefit. Dr. Pillai will say, you can't change anyone. You can only change yourself. So like my mom did in terms of like her coming around to me, it was like she finally saw over time, like, oh, this stuff must be working for her because she's got a great life. So if your spouse is not seeing the benefit, maybe there's ways to help that person see the benefit, right? Maybe there's ways of you attributing your practice to the benefits you're receiving. And then maybe he or she will be able to see over time, like, oh, this is beneficial. And they don't need to do it themselves, right? Again, they don't need to do it themselves. They really can't be opposing you. And I say can't because in my own perspective, that would feel harmful if someone was opposing me versus just not accepting, not supporting. If they're actively not supporting, meaning blocking you or mocking you or from actively participating, then that is going to be harmful. And you have to make a decision, a long-term decision of, is this the person you want in your life? And if it is, then you commit to how this is going to work. It could work that you just don't talk about it anymore and you do it anyway. And you share a life that doesn't have to do with this. Or maybe you have a heart to heart and say, it would mean a lot to me if you just supported me in a little bit. I know you don't get it, and I know you understand. I don't want you to. You don't need to. But what if you just did this thing for me? Maybe it's give me a half hour every Friday night, and that's my practice. And you support that I'm going to do that. You make the rules. You see how you may want to come together. And I think if people are driven by values, and if they valued your desire and ask for some sort of support, perhaps they could give that to you, even if they don't understand it. So there's a variety of ways from a relationship standpoint to work this in and see if there's some harmony that can be created. I hope that makes sense, Gabriella. Thank you. That's a really good question. There's a question, if it's family, parents, siblings oppose, can you remove them out of your life? With family members, can you let them go? Some people can. It's a totally personal question. I did not want to, and they didn't oppose me, like I said. But even though they didn't understand, I didn't want to let them go. It was important for me to maintain my family relationship. There are some people, however, that I do know have completely relinquished their families, completely don't speak to them at all because they were seriously opposed. Now you have to make up your mind. Also, it doesn't have to be black or white. It doesn't have to be all in or all out. It can be a variety. Maybe you see your parents or your siblings once a week, or you speak to them once a week or once every 2 weeks, and you don't bring up spirituality. How's everyone doing? How's your health? How are the kids, right? Like you just maintain a relationship that doesn't dip into your spiritual practice. You don't, like I said before, you don't need to be telling everybody your business. If they don't get what's going on down here, then keep it up here. Keep it to like, how's your health? How's the kids? How's work? That's it. Like maintain a different type of relationship. You don't have to be all in all your relationships, especially your family, because your family, someone you born into this, we have karma with them. There's going to be a lot of buttons that get pushed in our family life. And so I think what's important is just maintain the relationships as you can and what's best for that particular relationship. Not every relationship is the same. Good. So Dylan said, my relationship improved with people a lot after chanting mantras. Super. And that could be because you're refining yourself, right? So it doesn't necessarily, so I like the distinction here is that this person, Dylan, chanting mantras, they probably changed themselves. And so then their relationships changed because they themselves changed. Now, you don't have to bring your mantras into your relationships, right? Your mantras are changing you, you're chanting them, that's your relationship with the mantra. Then your relationship with others can be improved because you're changing yourself, you're improving yourself, you're creating more peace of mind, you're creating more abundance, you're creating more awareness and consciousness. This is funny. Chanting outside is easier because I'm wearing a face mask. Yeah, I suppose so. I always chant in my head. I don't chant out loud or with my mouth. So it's always easily concealed from me. What do you do if they don't try to understand and don't you, there's a lot of words in here I don't understand. Maybe Thea, you could reword that. I blended myself with Shreem Brzee. Very good. Trying to go back to Thea's question. What do you do if they don't try to understand and don't do you good? I harshly put a stop and don't ask more attention. So I'm going to try to understand what I think that means. If you put a harsh stop to a relationship because someone didn't want to understand, then as long as you're okay with it, that's great. Boundaries, healthy boundaries, are really important. They're sacred. Healthy boundaries keep us safe. So if someone is opposing or abusive to you in any way, whether it's because of your spiritual practice or any disagreement, you have every right, and I believe should be, creating a boundary to keep that harm from you. So the distinction, again, we're talking about someone is either trying to do you harm, or they're just disagreeing or indifferent. If they're disagreeing or indifferent, and you agree to disagree, and you want to maintain a relationship, again, with boundaries that keep you maybe from explaining or talking about your practice, fine. But if someone is causing you harm, you have, I believe, it's your duty to protect yourself so that you're not engaging in harmful activity that is not beneficial to you or that other person. All right, any other questions about this topic? Just bringing our attention back to Shreem Brzee. This is the Shreem Brzee channel. If there are things in your life you want to manifest, chanting Shreem Brzee and using this account for support and mantra for support is the way you can help propel that. Now, if you have people who are opposed to that and you feel that you know this is the right path for you, you have a choice to make, and that sometimes that means losing people. And if you lose people, you always want to wish them well. Kind of wrap things up in a little bow here. VM says, I don't want to talk about my Shreem Brzee practice to anyone. It's like a little secret and I don't want people to spoil it. That is a really good point. I love that. It's a little secret. You don't want anyone to spoil it because mostly people won't understand. Okay. I don't go up to people and start talking about my practice. I talk, but I'm very vocal about my practice on my social channels. So the people who are in my life from a variety of different places, different communities, they get to choose to listen to me talk about it or not, but I don't bring it to them and make them in my relationships or conversations with people who aren't in my spiritual community. I don't force it on them at all. And so, yeah, in fact, I hardly bring it up unless it just seems like something that might work for that person at that time. But I love that you don't need to talk to anyone about it, and you can keep it to yourself, and then it continues to be sacred and unharmed by others who don't understand. All right. Was there anything else I want to say in wrapping up in conclusion? No, I think that's it. There are a couple other questions in here. I'm going to stick to only the questions about this topic because we've made other videos about how to use Shreem Brzee, how to connect with the goddess and things like that. So every Friday here at 11 a.m. Pacific time, Shreem Brzee official, you can tune in, submit your questions or your suggestions for topics in the comments below so that we can see and start collecting them, and I can do videos based on what it is you want to talk about. So I will talk to you soon. You're amazing. Have a fabulous week. It's Friday. Enjoy the Venus energy. Chant your Shreem Brzee. Do your practice. Connect with the goddess. Watch Dr. Pillai's videos. And if you, actually the one thing we have going on still right now, if you're interested in joining rituals, there are Powertime practice events. And I think the link is below. And we have full moon ceremonies, Friday ceremonies, 13th moon for karma removal, and new moon for ancestors. And it's going to be for about 2.5 months, the whole program. So it's just the events though, and it's super powerful to connect. So I will talk to you soon. You're amazing. Thank you for being here. Namaste.